Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening wherever you are in the world. And from here in Manila, the Philippines, mabuhay. Welcome to Making Your Research Global, a workshop for early career scholars in communication about gaining academic presence internationally. This event is organized by the Ethnicity and Race in Communication, or ERIC division of the International Communication Association. It's also sponsored by the De La Salle University Southeast Asia Research Center and Hub, or SEARCH, and the Department of Communication. I'm Jason Cabañas, Professor of Communication at De La Salle University and ERIC Chair. I'll be your moderator today. Please could I remind everyone that to ensure the proceedings go smoothly, keep your video turned off and your audio on mute throughout the duration of the event. Before I introduce our stellar set of panelists for today, I'd first like to say a few words about ERIC, DLSU Search, and the DLSU Department of Communication. The ERIC division is concerned with methodological approaches and research that apply, extend, or develop communication theory and analysis through an examination of race and ethnicity within local, international, and transnational contexts. The division also works to advocate for the improved status, representation, and opportunities for underrepresented scholars in communication. To current ICA and ERIC members who are joining us today, hello again. And to everyone else, please do consider joining ICA and choosing ERIC as one of your divisions. I'd also like to acknowledge the ERIC team members who worked so hard for today's event, our Vice Chair, Professor Mohan Datta, Secretary, Dr. Jordan Stalker, International Liaison, Dr. Miriam Hernandez, and Student and Early Career Representative, Dr. Wanpini Muhammad. DLSU Search aims to become a cutting-edge research center and networking hub that addresses regional concerns as well as serves as a social advocacy arm for De La Salle Philippines. Its role is to generate Southeast Asian research, collaborate with specialists, network with other centers and institutes of Southeast Asian studies, provide resource materials, and serve as a hub for all matters concerning Southeast Asia. Its goal is to be a research center of, for, and by Southeast Asians. I'd like to acknowledge that the search director, Dr. Fernando Santiago Fernie, is joining us today. And finally, the DLSU Department of Communication aims to be a community of reflective, innovative, and strategic communicators driving sustainable and inclusive change. Its mission is to engage in a learner-centered, creative, and inquiry-driven curriculum attuned to the emergent realities we have and grounded on theoretical developments and ethical professional practice. The department offers the undergraduate programs be a major in communication arts and be a major organizational communication, as well as the postgraduate MA in communication major in applied media studies, which will soon be renamed MA in communication and will be offered alongside a professional master's program, which is currently being crafted. I'd like to acknowledge as well that some members of the department are here as well, and of course we are led by our chair, Dr. Angeli Diaz. And now for our panelists who will talk about the different avenues you can take to make your research global. I'll briefly introduce each of them now. They'll then have 10 minutes each to give their intervention about the topic assigned to them. Then we'll have a 45-minute Q&A, depending on how much time we have left at the end. In preparation for this Q&A, please do put your questions in the chat box. If you're feeling shy, you can also message me directly. Okay, so first in our lineup is Divina Sarwate, who will be giving her reflections as an early career scholar. Divina is Senior Research Fellow and PhD student at the Department of Communication, University of Hyderabad, India. She researches young people in social media with Professor Usha Raman. Divina is graduate student member at the Media Education Lab, Harrington School of Communication and Media, University of Rhode Island in the US, and member of the Future of ICA Conferences Task Force. Her latest work is published in Information Communication and Society, Journal of Communication, Frontiers in Human Dynamics, and Wiley-Blackwell. She regularly presents her work at conferences like ICA and IAMCR. After Divina, we'll have Dr. Melissa Click, who will be talking about submitting to journals. Melissa is Associate Professor of Communication Studies at Gonzaga University, USA. So that's the right image of Melissa. She is the current editor of ICA's journal Communication, Culture, and Critique. Melissa's work on fans, audiences, and popular culture has been published in television and new media, the International Journal of Communication Studies, Popular Communication and Popular Music and Society. She is the editor of Anti-Fandom, Dislike and Hate in the Digital Age, published by NYU Press, and co-editor of The Routledge Companion to Media and Fandom, to Media Fandom, published by Routledge, and Bitten by Twilight, published by Peter Lang. We also have Dr. Lik Sam Chan, who will be talking about submitting to conferences. Sam is assistant professor and the coordinator of the Global Communication Undergraduate Program at the School of Journalism and Communication, the Chinese University of Hong Kong, SAR. His research takes an interdisciplinary, cross-cultural, and mixed methods approach to examine the relationship between digital media, gender, and culture. Sam is the author of The Politics of Dating Apps, published by MIT Press, which examines dating app culture in China across user demographics: straight women, straight men, queer women, and queer men. He currently serves as the international liaison of the LGBTQ Studies Interest Group of ICA. And last but definitely not the least, we have Dr. Noor Karilawati binti Abdul Karim, who will be talking about building academic networks. Noor is Associate Professor of Communications and Media Studies and Deputy Dean of Research and Innovation at University Science Islam Malaysia in Malaysia. She's also founder of the Muslims in Creative Industries, or MICNI, research group. She obtained her PhD from the University of Leeds in the UK. Before joining academia, Noor was a practitioner at Astro Broadcasting between 2001 to 2008. She is principal investigator of a fundamental research grant and a research grant consortium from the Ministry of Higher Education in Malaysia. She is also an advisor for the Malaysia National Film Development Corporation, the Malaysia Content Forum, Media Ethics Think Tank Qatar, Astro Content Moderation Forum, and the National Film Censorship Board. So without further ado, let me turn over the floor to our first speaker, Divina Sarwate.
Thank you so much. I'm going to take a second to share my screen. I hope I'm audible and my presentation is now visible to everybody. Thank you so much, Professor Kavanies, for the lovely introduction and for the invitation along with Professor Mohan Datta. I'm so grateful. And I can't tell you how cool it is to be with this panel. Wonderful people here. And I look forward to hearing them. So I have the amazing opportunity to talk to you all about gender reflections from a PhD student / early career scholar, followed by the panelists who are going to be speaking about specific topics. So without further ado, I'm going to talk to you about what we have planned today. In the 10 minutes that I have, we're going to quickly look at where do or can you fit in as a doctoral student or early career researcher, especially if you're someone who's a first generation doctoral student. What can you do to keep tabs on global research in academia? How can you participate? And of course, I'll be peppering these sections with some examples in the end. So yeah, I research digital cultures and social media cultures. Of course, I'm going to have a meme on my slides, right? So I quite felt like the rectangular solid brick who's trying to fit in this beautiful design, especially during my first year. And I often asked myself, where do I fit in, or where can I fit in? And now that in my final year of my PhD, I actually should be writing my thesis, but here I am because this panel seems wonderful. I feel like if I had to say something to my first year PhD student persona, I would say you can fit in anywhere you want to be. It's just about seeking out what your interests are and what do you enjoy. Professor Kavanyas mentioned in the introduction that I study social media. Uh, who doesn't like scrolling on social media, right? That's one of my favorite pastimes. So if I work for, say, 20 minutes, I gift myself 2 hours of scrolling time, right? Um, on a serious note, social media and participating on social media comes naturally to me. I enjoy doing that. So I kind of took that and channeled that interest into researching social media, as well as engaging on social media about research. So whether it's universities or centers or projects that interest me, or whether it's about following people who do the work that I'm interested in on social media, I'm all over it. Um, since I look at children, adolescents, young people, and social media, there's a bunch of scholars that I tend to follow online. And since it comes naturally to me, my supervising professor, Professor Usha Raman, often tells me, "You're itching to go and talk about this on Twitter, aren't you?" And I kind of have to stop myself from doing that. But if social media doesn't come naturally to you, please find something that you particularly enjoy and how you can use that to connect with stuff that's happening around you that you're interested in. What can you do to keep tabs on global academia and research? Well, ask yourself, whose work do you love? For instance, in my case, I love to follow the work of, say, for instance, Professor Sonia Livingstone or Professor John Potter, Professor Renee Hobbs, um, Shrivi Ramasubramanian, um, Amanda Third, etc. But these are specifically people who work in social media, young people, online media, media education, media literacy. But then I also love the work of other scholars like Professor Mohan Datta or Professor Jason Cavaniers or Professor Devika Chavla. I tend to follow these people on different social media portals. I tend to keep an eye out on talks that they're giving, webinars that they're hosting, to kind of keep tabs on what's going on, what's trending, what's happening right now in the global academic and research space. Where can you find your spaces or make your spaces? So what I did was early on in my PhD career, I joined organizations and associations like the ones listed here, ICA, INCR, AIR, and then I got invited to join as graduate student member to the Media Education Lab. These are, spaces that I found where I could find more about what's current, what's trending, um, maybe something that has happened in the past, it's historical or archival research, but that still holds relevance and people are going back to it. To talk about it now, connecting it with what's trending and happening now. And these are also spaces I felt where I could sound out my own ideas. So, for instance, there's this one research escalator session that a lot of different divisions and interest groups of ICA offer. When you want to submit to their conference, you can actually use that as an option for your submission, where you're sending an extended abstract, it's a work in progress, and then it's up for mentorship. And you kind of go back to people who are assigned to you to guide you through that work in progress and answer questions that you might have because that's maybe a bottleneck that you're facing. So things like these, you need to kind of keep tabs on and find out what works for you, what is something that you'd like to look at, for instance, to further your work. And finally, how can you participate? You need to find out what do you value the most. What is happening in your area of interest globally and what's happening locally, and how do you kind of merge the two? How do you localize? Is there some way in which you can become a voice in the myriad voices available online, offline, regarding the topic of your area of interest? And I'm going to give you those examples that I promised. So these are doctoral students, early career researchers whom I happened to meet through the course of my PhD journey. and I hope I can call them my friends now because we've been in touch for a while. But Lara, for instance, and Zoe, for instance, are academic moms, and they're prime examples of, you can do it too, because you know how difficult it is to manage everything when, especially, you're a young mom within academia. Lara does some amazing work uh, at ICA. She's part of the Mobile Communication Interest Group. She leads and she ensures that she opens up avenues for young doctoral students and early career researchers to participate in the interest group. Juan is another brilliant young scholar. She's a PhD student right now, and she made it a point to have a special event during ICA this year, which was about PhD students and early career researchers, especially from the global south, and how they could come on and network and talk about what plagues them, what interests them, solutions, problems that they'd like to talk about. Zoe is fantastic. Not only does she do amazing work in creator cultures, she also has her own collective. By the way, if you're looking at social media, digital cultures, influencer cultures, please look at her collective, and the reading list that she has is brilliant. Vakas, for instance, recently fought and won an election for a leadership position. So, what I'm trying to say is these are things that you need to scope out, and these are things that you need to look at, and maybe, just maybe, do them yourself without thinking, oh, can I do that? The self-doubt that's nagging you, please put that away. Hide that devil, kind of boost the angel up on your shoulder and do it, right? And of course, my friends from India, Dr. Aditya Deshbandhu and Anirudh Jena, who is part of my cohort, do amazing, brilliant work. So Aditya is one of the rare people in India who works in gaming cultures. He's got one book down. He's writing another one. And both he and Anirudh do something brilliantly. They don't just communicate about their work within research and academic circles, but they make it a point to communicate about their work even to general people or slightly specialized people within mainstream media. For instance, Aditya writes a weekly column on games for a local newspaper. Anirudh does a very good job of taking his work and trying to translate it into his local language, Odia, which is an Indian regional language, and makes it a point to speak about his work. He also writes regularly for Economic and Political Weekly, which is a very cool publication in India. And that's my time. I look forward to your questions and Q&A. Over to Melissa, ma'am.
Thank you for getting things started, Davina, and thanks to our hosts. I'm really excited to be here. Let me just share my screen and warn you, I have a bit of a cough, so I'll do my best to not hack the whole time. So I'm really excited to have the chance to talk with you. I can certainly remember being a graduate student and an early career scholar and trying to figure out how to publish my own work. So I'm really happy to share some tips that will hopefully help you. So let me start first by talking about the kinds of submissions you might have published. The kind we think about the most is probably the original research article or theoretical article. They can be anywhere from 7,000 to 9,000 words, depending on the journal. And my cat now wants in the room, as cats. I hope you can't hear him screaming, but he's loud. But in addition to original articles, you could also publish a forum post, which in our journal, Communication, Culture, and Critique, is usually on a contemporary issue. So we recently had a forum on academic life in the pandemic, for instance. You might enjoy reading some of those pieces. They're 1,500 words to about 2,000 words. And I also wouldn't not think or avoid thinking about publishing blog posts. There are particular academic sites that could publish your work. In the US, I can think of the University of Texas blog Flow. That's a really excellent one, but I'm sure there's a whole lot you could choose from. And book reviews are a great start for new scholars. So you might consider writing about a new book that's come out. You want to check to make sure that all journals or the journals that you're interested in actually publish book reviews. Our journal, for instance, doesn't currently publish book reviews, but I think book reviews are an amazing opportunity for young scholars to get started. He's not going to stop screaming till I let him in, so I'm just going to deal with it. Do your thing. This is not about you, kitty. So, cats, right? So how do you select a journal? I have a little bit of advice for you. I know that with my colleague, Dr. Cabañas, we have been reworking the mission and clarifying the mission for communication, culture, and critique. So it's always a good idea to look at the journal's mission and scope to make sure that the piece you've written is a good fit for what they are doing. Another suggestion would be to look at the journal's editorial board members. If the folks you're citing in your piece appear in the editorial board, that's a really good sign that you found a good fit. Of course, the editorial board may not have folks that you're citing, and that's okay. But if you can sort of know some of the names on the editorial board and understand the kind of work they do, that's just another layer for understanding the kinds of work that the journal might publish. And then finally, I think the best way to really be sure you are submitting to the right place is to look through a couple of issues of the journal. Look at the titles, look at the kinds of folks who are publishing, try and understand the areas of interest. You can, you don't have to read all the articles, but you could look at the abstracts, and that will help you understand the kinds of things the journal is likely to publish. Finally, let me give you a couple of tips for submitting to a journal. One of the best suggestions that I can make for you is to attend the session that ICA hosts every year, which is an Ask an Editor session. Now you get to do that tonight too, so I hope you will have some questions for me. But typically, all of the editors of the ICA journals will attend, and they will tell you about things going on in the journal, the ways they think about the kinds of submissions that they get, and it offers you a great opportunity to ask them questions. I would strongly recommend that you ask a faculty member that you trust, or a graduate school colleague that you think would give you really good feedback to read over your submission before you submit it. When you submit to an academic journal, you're of course submitting your work for peer review. So you need to get used to people reading your work and giving you feedback. And so if there's a weakness in your piece that is easily fixed before you submit it, be really helpful to get that feedback before you submit it. So I strongly encourage you to have someone else read your work before you submit. Along with reworking our journal's mission, we have really been working to make the functioning of our journal more transparent. And so a lot of journal editors put a lot of time and care and thought into the guidelines that they offer for authors. So make sure you know what citation practices they use, the word count, any other formatting issues. We also, again, because we're trying to make the process more transparent, have written a bit about what we ask reviewers to think about when they read your piece. So that can help you think about or anticipate things that reviewers might say about your work. So definitely take some time to review and certainly follow the journal's guidelines. We're not this strict at Communication, Culture, and Critique, but I do know some journal editors will just reject your piece if you haven't used APA citation practices, for instance. So they do look at the formatting of a piece when it comes in. So that's definitely important to consider. The best advice I can give you is be ready for revisions or rejection. Rejection in particular is the hidden part of academic publishing. People tend to be pretty quiet about the number of rejections they've received, but let me assure you, everybody gets rejections, no matter where they are in their field, in their length in their career. Everybody gets rejected. It never feels any better, or at least it hasn't felt any better for me at this point in my career, but it's common and it happens. It doesn't mean that your piece is bad if it's rejected. It might mean it wasn't a good fit for the journal you submitted to. So don't give up if you get a rejection. If you get feedback with a rejection, certainly follow what the reviewers suggested. Think about it, revise, and then resubmit elsewhere. If you receive a revise and resubmit, which is also very common, the thing that's most uncommon is a flat out accept in your first round. So revisions are really typical. So look very closely at what the reviewer said and make sure that you revise accordingly. So I jumped ahead a little bit, but my last bit of advice here is look very carefully over the reviewer's concerns. Most journals will ask you to write a letter as you revise and detail the kinds of things that you did to address the reviewer's concerns. So definitely make sure you are doing what they ask you to. And I will leave it there and turn it over to the next speaker and look forward to your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Melissa. Let me look for my slides. Hi, folks. Thank you so much for the invitation from Eric. I'm very happy to be here. I think this is a very amazing panel with very diverse representation. My name is Lik Sam Chan. I actually go by Sam, and sometimes I read email addressing me as Lik, then I know this person probably doesn't know me well. Earlier, Jason mentioned that I'm an assistant professor at the Chinese University of Hong Kong. I'm also organizing a conference, a mini conference in December called Queer Cultures and Digital Asia Symposium. I will tell you more about this later on. So on applying to conferences, I think the first question that you may want to know is why we are going to do so. For those who have been presenting conference, you know that we may prepare for weeks, and then we rehearse our presentation for hours, and we end up having 12, 13, 15 minutes presentation. And on top of that, people are looking at us. Sometimes it's a very stressful experience. So why would we as academia, we should do this? And I have some answers for all of you. In fact, I take some answers from this website called Global Academic Institute, but I also put in some of my thoughts. I said X reasons because apparently after you have go to conferences, you will develop your own reasons. The first reason I think is really strong motivation for me to go to conferences is to present a paper and to receive feedback. Sometimes feedback, it comes from the written feedback when you submit to ICA, for example. In January, you will receive the feedback in written form. This is one way you can get feedback on your paper. And the second chance where you can actually get feedback is during the presentation, during the Q&A after your presentation. But a lot of feedback actually comes from after the presentation. For example, during the coffee break, during the reception, you happen to run into a person who actually listened to your presentation, and that at those environment, people feel more relaxed and they will start to share about how they think about your research. And I guess that's why this is also very important for us to, before you submit to a journal, what Melissa just mentioned earlier, you can try to submit to a conference first to get some objective feedback, because those reviewers probably do not know who you are. This is the first reason why I think it's important to go to conferences. Second is to find out what is new. You can read journal articles to find out what is new, but as you know, journal articles takes years, sometimes like 2 years to publish. But for most conference, the turnaround time is quicker. It may take like 36 months to a year. That's why I think going to a conference, listening to presentation will actually give you an idea of what is new in your field. And in fact, most conference consists of many, many short presentations. It's like you are having tapas, or like if you are Chinese, you're having dim sum. You have tons of small dishes, but then you can have lots of flavors so that you know what is new. And the third reason is to network for future collaborations. At conference, major or mini conference, you actually run into people who are doing research similar to you. In this situation, you can actually listen to different presenters to see if there's a chance for you to collaborate with others. In fact, for me, I had found 2 collaborators at ICA before, and one of them actually ended up becoming a long-term collaborator with me. And all happened in a casual conversation. When we meet at the conference, I said, "Oh, you're doing dating apps research. I do dating apps research. Should we collaborate?" And then we had 3 papers came out already. And the fourth reason is kind of similar to the third one, but I think this is more about your emotional support. People like me doing queer studies, I am the only person doing queer study in my school. And in fact, sometimes I feel lonely because I feel like my colleagues next door, they may not know, they may not understand, or they may not even appreciate my research. But at conference, I can find people who share my interests. And then we kind of build a small supporting groups to share our worries, our thoughts about this subfield. And sometimes we actually share tips. For example, I submit to a journal and think the editors really appreciate my research or research of this kind. I would tell my peer group, hey, we can try this journal because the editors are quite accepting of queer studies, etc. And the last one is very important for me, especially now I'm no longer a student, I work as a professor, because there's no deadline to submit journals. Journals accept, unless you're talking about special issue, but for most journals, there's a rolling basis. You can submit your paper at any time. And with no deadline, people start to procrastinate. But conference always have a deadline for submission. And I guess for those who need some external motivators, you can consider using conference as a way to manage your writing process. For example, ICA, the deadline is November. So every November, you must produce something. And that actually motivates you from an external perspective. But not all conferences are the same. And I guess from my experience in the past 9 years, I would distinguish 2 types of conferences. The first one is called generic conferences. For example, like ICA, or on the bottom, you can see IAMCR, which is a European-based communication conference. And well, although they're European-based and American-based, they're trying to reaching out. So ICA, we are going to have conference in Paris. IAMCR, we are going to have conference in Beijing in 2022. So for this generic conference, why I call it generic, because it's a conference tailored to the whole field of communication. And in this generic conferences, you often find divisions. ERIC, the ethnicity and race, or LGBTQ studies, or mass communication, interpersonal communication, etc. So this conference usually tailored to the whole field. And because it's tailored to the whole field, it attracts lots of people who are working in different aspects of communication. And sometimes you actually run into big names. I have been working in computer media communication for a while, and I have read work from like Joseph Walter for decades. I mean, not decades, 2 decades, 20 years. And then I ran into him. You know, that is to me, it's like a kind of like a worship, or and very rare opportunity for me to meet someone whose work I've been admiring for years. And the fourth characteristics of generic conference is that it's usually more expensive because this conference have to tailor to lots of people, and they usually happen in a hotel. And that's why the fee are more expensive. So apart from generic conference, the second types of conference I call themed conferences. Instead of tailored to the whole field of communications, it's usually about subfield or even an issue. Here you can see an example called the Digital Intimacies. It's a mini conference organized by Australian universities for 7 years in a row. It's really about digital intimacy, so about dating apps, porn, online sexuality, etc. And it's very niche. It's about a particular topic. Because it's a particular topic, so it only attracts maybe 20 or 30 people. So it's fewer people in the conference, which means it's very easy for student and early career scholars to know each other, to network each other. And in fact, for many themes conference, it's less competitive. Many organizers of theme conference are very encouraging. They will really encourage student and early career scholars to submit their work. And this conference usually happen on campuses, and the charge is less expensive. And of these 5 reasons I proposed earlier, this is just my really simple comparison. I think if you want to present a paper to get comments, a theme conference may be better because of this focused theme of that conference. Everyone in the theme conference know kinds of your work that you're doing. So the comments you get is usually more specific and more high quality. But if you're interested in knowing what is new in the field, going to generic conference really helped you. Like I said, you got like 20 presentations in a single day, and there is a 5 days conference, so you can listen to 100 presentations. So going to generic conference really helped you to know what is new. To network for future collaborations, I also recommend you to go into generic conferences because you have more people there. But if you want to meet some like-minded individuals, again, themed conference will be the place you should go to. Themed conference, like I said, only attract like-minded people, and they're doing a very theme of a very specific interest. And lastly, both conferences also have deadline. Please respect deadline for conferences. That also helps you to manage your writing. And lastly, my last things that I want to share with you is how or where can you find these conferences? For the ICA, NC, IMCR, these generic conferences, most of your senior colleagues know. Ask them what conferences they have been to and ask for their experience to see if they recommend to you. But for themed conference, usually I will recommend you to subscribe to mail lists. Earlier, Davina talked about AIR. Actually, AIR has a mail list, or you can subscribe to the com list or these media, culture, communication, cultural studies mail list. You can, when you get periodical updates, and then from those updates, you can actually see. Here, I give you an example. The second is a call for paper for a very specific theme conference on Barrett's cutoff, which I don't know who this person is, but apparently those who know this person will be really interested in going to this particular theme conference. And this is all I have prepared today. I'm happy to answer questions later on.
Thank you, Dr. Lik Sam. How do I address you? So I would like to thank the organizer, Professor Cabanas, for inviting me, and as well as Dr. Fernando, yeah, and ICA, Eric, and the entire floor who come and joined us today. My name is Dr. Noor Karilawati. Let me share a little bit of my information, and yes. Okay, I'm from Malaysia, and today, okay. So sorry, it's a technical. Okay. Oh, sorry for the technical error. The new share. There's a technical error there. Jason, can you hear me? Can I check with you guys?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, okay. I think this is some kind of interference there. So I would like to apologize to everyone. Okay, yeah. Okay, here you go. I would like to share my screen. Okay, I did my PhD at the University of Leeds, and I think there's something wrong with my with my screen just now. Let me silence this for a bit. Okay, I will talk about my research, which is Muslims in creative media industry, and what inspired me to do this research is that it's because my PhD, yeah, that inspired me to conduct this research. So, oh, sorry. I am not sure why these things become very difficult. Okay. Okay, I have a PhD from University of Leeds in communications, yeah, in communication studies, and I did my master's in Islamic studies, and then also my first degree also in Islamic studies, and I have a little bit of experience in the industry, as Dr. Cabanas have introduced me just now earlier. Yeah, and oh my God, this is so sorry. Okay, and we got a research grant. It's not much, but then it started from my research, PhD research, and then I wrote a research grant proposal, and during my during my what we call this convocation, at Leeds, and then I got a very good news where the university have received a huge amount of grant from the Ministry of Higher Education, and one of it was my grant, and I thought it's like really a lot for social science research. Yeah, normally we got this amount given by the ministry to the science or pure science researchers. So I was overwhelmed. I was so excited at that time, and this is how our research began. Yeah. Okay, and next, this is my topic. Then the research that I've conducted, because my research, my PhD research was about production workers, media production workers. And this is our topic that we submitted and we received this grant, and we conducted for 3 years. Yeah. And then I was quite, this is something new, because just imagined in 2016, I just got my PhD, and then I have to kind of lead a huge research grant, yeah, and manage the researchers also who came from different backgrounds. And from that research grant, I start to engage with different group of people from the industry, from the community. Yeah, so this is our engagement with the policymakers. Fiend stands for Film Development Corporation, and SKMN or MCMC is Multimedia Communication Commissions. Yeah, overlooking all types of content that has been the kind of regulator for all the contents on advertising, on all kind of platforms such as television, radio, and also including advertising. And my recent engagement with the CMCF, Communications and Multimedia Content Forum, or known as Content Forum today. So very recently, we organized, or we worked together into the public consultation. So this is how my research kind of stemming from my PhD, and then I start to engage with the people and the policymakers in different from different background. Yeah, and some of the pictures that I would just want to share, maybe hopefully inspire all of us to continue research that we started during our PhD, and then we started to kind of looking from different angle, working with different parties in and as well as from the industrial abroad, research abroad. I'm just sharing some pictures of my engagement with the industry, animations, broadcasting industries, so, and also film industry. So these are some of my participation in the forum, as well as engagement with the local community. We come up with a conference, and then we kind of testing some kind of robots and interaction with human, or specifically television production workers. Also branch stemming from my research. Yeah. Okay, if you can see here, the research also, we like kind of looking into different opportunity. Yeah, for this, we come up with an app for Islamic educators, yeah, teachers who teach students or young children at the kindergarten. And we look for opportunity, we look for grants, other grants rather than the first grant that we received. And there's another grant that we're looking at where we focus on the documentary film production. It's still ongoing, and I'd love to share with all of you. Yeah, inshallah. And yeah, there's some of other work or collaboration with other partners abroad. such as recently I worked with the, this is in 2019, 18, yeah, we had a really good time during the Media Ethic think tank, Qatar. And I met so many people from different backgrounds. Maybe you know some of them in this picture, and the big names, yeah, theories, researchers. I've been like looking up, or I've read the news or their papers during my PhD time. So yeah, it was very interesting and intriguing. Yeah, as a new researcher or new scholars like me, so I thought it's a really great opportunity. So you also make yourself or your research visible, and people come to you. They seek for your advice. They ask for your opinion, or even kind of comment. Give a feedback on the production or content that they have produced. So this is my connections with some of our Indonesian colleagues. Yeah, recently they just set up a center for digital humanities and creative industry. So I was invited and share my experience as well with them. And yeah, we're going to have a very really fun collaboration together in future. So these are some of my project also come from me. Yeah, so we introduce or we develop this. This is my partner, Sami, Dr. Sami. So he's in mechanical engineering school at Uniten. So we try to find a research area or niche that we can work together. For this, the keywords is television production and the how media workers can be kind of exposed or engage with the current recent technology. So this paper has been published, have been presented in IEEE conference. And you see, sometimes you always thought that you are focusing on human research, research on humans, yeah, on human elements and the society. But they never thought that, oh, what if we come up with something, we come up with the application, yeah, we come up with something that can help the community, the production community out there, any part of the world, yeah, because I always kind of whenever I met people in Qatar and some of the researchers and scholars, I engage with them in such a way that I try to understand what are the challenges so that I can go back and then look again into my research and, hey, there's some gaps here that maybe can be addressed, and then can another set of research grant altogether is like close to 500,000. Again, it's huge, and we received this during the pandemic. So there's still a lot of amount of money that we have to manage, yeah, the grant. How are we going to make sure that this grant will give impact, not only to me, yeah, but also to the society, to my university, to the industry, number one, because our aim is to improve, yeah, the well-being of the people in the media industry. So these are my research colleagues, yeah. And yeah, we improve to we aim to improve the quality of working life in the media industry. So we focus on television, film industry, as well as animation industry, yeah, because these are different level of different kind of businesses that people engage with on daily basis. Yeah, they create content. And at the same time, we normally research into content that has been produced, have been published, has been on air. Yeah, people already consume that. And but the spirit lies within, you know, in this research is that I'm also intrigued with the what happened, what can we change, how can we do, what can we do to help the people who work in the industry, who work behind the scene. I've also wrote a paper, a chapter, Routledge, on the Muslims behind the scene, yeah, Muslim woman behind the scene is, maybe you can go and find it, is under the editors Susan Liddy and O'Brien. So we focus on women in the media industry. This is another exciting branch of MIGMI's research. It's huge. It's a very huge area that can be explored. Yeah, many areas, many aspects and angles. So we thought we should keep going, yeah, in order to make sure that we maybe one day can improve the working life, can improve the ecosystem of the media industry in Malaysia. So on that note, I'm so sorry what happened earlier because of this technical sound and, and yeah, also you can follow MIGMI Research Group on Facebook. And I think that's all. Back to you, Jason.
Thank you so much, Noor, and thanks to all our panelists. May we ask all of you now to please turn on your cameras and your mics as we go to the Q&A. I've been observing the chat, and we've had a very, very active discussion going on, and thank you everyone for relieving me of my job of moderating, because you guys have actually answered the questions very, very well. But of course, we want to keep the questions coming. And as you know, as you can already see across our panel, they'll be able to speak to all the different topics that you have been raising. So if you had other questions for our panelists, please do put them in the chat box, and we'll address them as we go on. But also, may I just ask people to, Dr. Fernando Santiago will be putting a poll. Please do answer the poll. It's just really a short question about whether you are an ICA member or an ERIC member or not. Thank you so very much. So did we have any questions? Please put them in. Miriam, yes?
I have a question, but I was checking I cannot make a question through the Q&A. I find it, but I was like, thank you everybody for the presentation. That was amazing. And I was a PhD student. I work in the US right now, but I was a PhD student in Hong Kong. So I really wish I had this kind of like perspective of how to navigate conferences and research and grants when I was a PhD student. So I think if you are a PhD student, you will find it very, very, very enlightening. I do have a question for Dr. Click that does come more and more, like particularly from the rejections that I have gotten, and that sometimes you may have like distinct comments from reviewers, like someone that says like maybe positive and accept, and then the other one that says reject. And is there a possible, and my friends and I have been wondering, how do we write a rebuttal letter? I mean, without being disrespectful, to say like, could you please reconsider this? Like I am answering the comments, but I'm getting very distinct things. So how can we address this? Being that we have to be so polite when answering, dealing with editors and reviewers as well.
That's a really good question. And what's hard is I can tell you what I would do, but I can't tell you what other editors will do, of course. I feel like it's my job as editor to look at cases where reviewers have very divergent viewpoints, and it's then for me to make a decision. So if I feel like I agree more with the reviewer that says reject, then I'll probably lean in that direction. Now, I don't know what other journal editors do, of course. I can only tell you what I do. But my guess is if you received 2 divergent reviews, the editor probably sided with the reject side. So I guess my question to you is, what do you hope a rebuttal will accomplish? Do you want the journal editor to overturn their position. Because again, depending on who it is, I don't know that I'd be willing to take them on. But I'll also say it feels really unfair. I've been in that situation too. It feels really unfair. And again, I feel like my job as editor is to make sure you get 2 reviews from 2 people who are going to do a good job. And sometimes that's a failure. And I would want you to politely challenge me if you felt that way. And I'd certainly be open to it. But it's really hard to know what to do at that point, I guess I would say. It's a sticky area. Some editors feel like they have a lot of authority that should be respected. And so I think that's a really touchy area. I can see Davina wants to jump in. Please don't hesitate. Come on in.
Yes, thank you so much. So I, obviously, since I'm still just a PhD student, haven't become the editor of a journal, but I have reviewed 4 conferences and journals. What I believe you should really stand up for your work, especially if you think that you've performed your research with rigor. That's extremely important. And it's not just something that you've come up with because there's a certain trend going on, especially if you're from the global south, and if you believe that the review might come from a place where they might not appreciate the local context, so nuances, and that is something that you want to bring to the editor's attention, you can politely tell them that this is particularly why I have an objection to this particular review. I have actually been extremely lucky in this aspect, where my reviewers have kind of critiqued my work, but then also told me exactly how to resolve the problem that they've raised. If you get that sort of reviews, nothing like it, right?
Maybe if Noor or Sam wanted to jump in, if you had any tips as well, if you get reviews that are quite divergent, maybe not necessarily a reject, but you got 2 reviews that have different sets of advice for you. Maybe you've had an experience with that. What would you suggest our participants would do in that situation?
I think, Jason, what I would do is that I kind of revise again, relook again into my research paper, into the article, whether or not any of these comment can kind of help improve the structure, the argument. Because when I review the paper also, there are some of the research paper that they kind of some areas they're not clear. So I also find it hard for me to comment, as a reviewer, how I'm going to improve. So it's like I try to put myself in their shoes as well, and as a reviewer's shoes, because I also a reviewer, and as well as when people review my paper, I'm a reviewee. My paper has been like kind of you have to look again, you have to restructure according, but not necessarily you follow everything, because you'll feel better. You need to have that authority. You need to own your research. That's what I've been telling myself and my students as well. Own your research. Your research better. Sometimes the reviewer, they're not clear about what you're trying to say or to do. And I picked all of these points so that it won't make you so far frustrated when you got rejected. So keep it going.
So for my case, in situation where I got a positive review and a negative review, and if the editor decide to reject my paper, I usually move on. I usually move on to another journal. I think it may not timely wise for me to spend time to feeling upset, because I know rejection happens. all of us here have been rejected many times. And I have to tell all my students that rejection really happened and this is part of the norm. And just move on to other journals. And I think some journals editors may be more just like what Melissa earlier. Some editors actually pay more attention to the individual pieces. Some editors may lack their editorial authors to do the work. So the more you submit to journals, the more you understand there's the different cultures of different journals. So I encourage all of us not to feel discouraged. If you got a rejection eventually, just move on. Believe yourself. Your work is valued and there's always a place to publish.
Thank you very
Everyone
much.
is shifting ahead.
There was a question here that Melissa already answered, but I think it's also quite important to address. It's in the Q&A, and the question had to do with like submitting papers in a native language, for example. And this really raises the question of obviously, whether for good or bad, the kind of shared language we have in academia is English. And many of us are, not native speakers of English. So maybe you can share your thoughts about this. Like, how important is it in submitting to conferences, to journals, in networking? Is this really a major stumbling block? For example, if you're not the most comfortable person with the English language. So our panelists, anyone can jump in, please.
We actually are making headway in this particular context in terms of conferences. So a lot of conferences are actually encouraging people to submit in different languages that they're comfortable in. I know AIR's running a committee. They actually had a survey recently that they shared about translating abstracts and extended abstracts to make it more accessible in other languages. ICA this year had the option of submitting in different languages. So I suppose somewhere IMCR always does it. It usually tends to accept submissions in the language that the conference is, where it's placed, the venue. I suppose in conferences, it's much more encouraging. And I think it's a good idea to submit in your in a language that you're comfortable in conferences, because you can also get feedback immediately. Publishing is a different story, I believe, because a lot of people tend to depend on English to access your work, because unfortunately that's sort of become like a universal language in publishing. And if you want to, especially from the global south, talk about your ideas and have a wider audience for your ideas, it's important that you publish in English. But I think it's a good idea to present in a language you're comfortable in, get feedback, work on your paper, write it in English and publish it in English. Eventually, someday we'll also have publishing options in different languages. So fingers crossed.
Anyone else wants to chip in on that?
I'm not a presenter, but I kind of feel like my first language is Spanish, and it like similar to rejections, it does hurt when feedback gets back to you, and they clearly say like you need an editor. Like I've had very harsh well at the time, like now I seem like, well, yeah, of course, but at the time they seem very harsh. Like English is obviously not the author's first language. Like you should get an editor. And it does hurt thinking like, oh my God, my English is awful. And maybe I think it's great, or English is great. It helps us communicate. But the English of academia is very specific. And there are many issues there. And I think now that we are preparing to review for ERIC, for ethnicity and race, something that we have found is that, yes, we welcome, like something that we have found in the past, and certainly we discuss it, that people apply for like European or not US countries. And it's kind of like in the past, it's like, well, the English may need some editing a little bit, or it doesn't follow the structure of papers as kind of like academia expects it, of the introduction, literature review, the methods, the results, discussion. Certainly in Mexico, when I read papers, like you can find some commentaries in the introduction, or some kind of like additional findings in the discussion. And that is just so, like, I remember reading when I was younger, so not acceptable in a paper that is academic. So to me, I'm torn on that one, and that's something that we have discussed, that the fact that if we want to truly make research global, we have to look at the value of the research. But also, on the other hand, if you are preparing these documents, you should be aware that you don't know who's going to be reviewing it, and they may really apply like, this is how research should be done. And they may be very harsh, like, it should follow this structure, and English should be super academic, and that one. I don't have a solution for that one. I just feel like it's just up to our kind of like divisions to keep fighting that research is valuable regardless, that it's not following the Western or the European or American type of academia.
I think I might have a solution for that. Although I think I'm really optimistic when I say this. But there are journals specifically who kind of address these issues, and the editors make it a point to work with the authors despite having crazy workloads. And everybody knows that reviewers and editors are not exactly compensated. It's a service that you provide. But for instance, MCS is an amazing journal that does not necessarily ask you to follow the traditional introduction, literature review, methods, findings. So if you try to build a narrative of your work and communicate it with rigor, scientifically, they're all game. So look for journals, essentially.
Melissa, you wanted to add as well?
First of all, Miriam, I'm really sorry to hear the experience that you shared. In my opinion, that is worst practice for reviewers and editors, not best practice. As an editor, if I had seen a reviewer give a comment like that, I would edit their comment and I would block them from reviewing in the future. So that's not okay, especially as an ICA journal, for instance, where we are an international organization. I think we need to do better. And I'm really happy to have the partnership of Dr. Cabanas. We are working, we have been working to make sure our editorial board is more internationally representational. We're also beginning to develop a project that we hope will be useful. We're going to try piloting it, where we allows maybe not the right word, we encourage people who whose native language isn't English to use a pre-submission process. So you can submit your piece to be peer reviewed before it is officially submitted, so that if you do need support in structure or in language, you will receive that, and it will not keep you from getting a strong review from the journal. So that's we have our next editors meeting really soon, next week, I think, right, Jace? So we're gonna start, we believe that's more equitable, and that will increase the representation of folks who've been traditionally marginalized, and has kept them out of our journal. And we, as a critical journal, feel like we can do better and want to try and show the other ICA journals what's possible.
I wanted to ask Sam as well. Is this something that, for example, with your experience in conference organizing, do you incorporate this already, like thinking about the language issue?
I think it really depends on the budget. If you talk about translating work, there's Google Translate, but it's not always accurate. It's accurate for some languages, but not all languages. So when I organized a conference that's going to take place in December, I actually have to work within my budget, and I have co-organizers from Australia and also another colleague from my university, and we just could not afford this kinds of translation work. So I guess what we are now talking about is not an individual effort. It's more about the field itself. How do we, as a communication, which we talking about making sense of the world, how can we appreciate works outside the language of English? And can I also like speak a little bit to the format? Because earlier Davila talked about the introduction, late review method discussion session. I believe this also is not particularly US or UK. It's actually a very particular form of writing in APA style. And when I was in grad school, I was trained in APA style. So I always write, I thought this is the only way that you can write, basically. So there's one piece of article I wrote in that style, I submit to a critical journal. One of the reviewer actually point out that why would I follow an APA style in a critical journal? And I was like, oh, this is happening. To me, I did not know there's other kinds of writing style in the world. So I guess by reading more, by actually really reading more, we can start to appreciate and start to learn that actually, apart from that typical lit review method, that kinds of format, there's actually other types of writing styles that we can try and experiment. And especially in interview research, that typical like social scientific writing doesn't really fit into writing a narrative.
You're muted, Jace. Oh, we cannot hear you, Jace.
Oops. All right. I wanted to share this question, and I know Melissa's beginning to answer it, but also I think it's just very important for early careers, because this is such a tricky terrain to navigate. So the question is it okay to publish in open access journals? They require a publishing fee, and as such, some people in my institution have remarked it might be predatory. However, I came across the CFP from a researcher's framework I use in my work. The journal is not fraudulent and it ranks well. When I was going to withdraw my paper, I've also been offered a fee waiver. However, I'm hesitant to pursue due to the reactions of other academics. I think it's very tricky for some people to kind of discern which ones are predatory or not. They're just truly open access. So any tips at all that you can give?
So I can jump in here because I've actually done this. So speaking from personal experience, this was work that we were invited to submit. So it was a CFP that we were shared, and we submitted an abstract together with my supervising professor and another very cool professor, Srividya Ramasubramanian. And the commissioning editors, the special issue editors, were actually amazing, cool scholars within the field. We went ahead and we actually submitted our work. It got published, which was all fine. But the best part about it is the minute they found out that our work is coming from India, the commissioning editors were a mix of USA, Australia, and someone from India who is now based in the US. They immediately changed the editor to someone who knew the Global South, so the Indian editor. They also made it a point to assign reviewers who knew about the Global South, were from the Global South, to review our work. And the feedback that we got was excellent. If you feel like that is something that you can live with, where some people are casting aspersions on the quality of the journal, whether it's predatory, et cetera, but if you want to go through that process of getting amazing feedback and having an all-round positive experience, go ahead and do it. If you're very hesitant about it, maybe look for another journal. Also, to kind of respond to what Melissa ma'am and Miriam were saying earlier on, I think it's a very good idea to submit to special issue CFPs, because they sometimes tend to have a much more robust feedback session, because the editors are closely working only for that special issue, only with those authors. Other editors and reviewers might be stretched too thin for that kind of involvement. So that's again from personal experience, because I'm doing another submission for a special issue.
I wanted to prod Noor to talk a little bit about also, how sometimes we want to publish also in perhaps like regional, like Southeast Asian based journals. So would you have, or wherever region you're in, would you have any tips of like, okay, this is a good one, even though it might not be like the the super international one, but would you have any advice, Nor, like how to tell like, oh, this one is a good journal, even if it's a regional one or a national one?
I suppose one way to go about it could be university publications because they tend to be authentic. As long as your publisher is not on the Beals list for predatory journals, I suppose it's a good idea to publish.
Yeah. Ella, did you want to say something about that too?
I don't have any, I mean, of course, you look for the non-predatory journal and the something that very close to your research area that you think they might be interested. And the, sometimes you should understand also why your paper got rejected, because maybe it doesn't sit well in that particular CFP or in the whole entire theme of the journal. And of course, they also look at the quality of your arguments and all these things. But I'm sure there's no such thing as bad research or bad publication. You have put your soul and blood and tears into your paper. And then I agree with Dr. Miriam just now. You were saying about there's no such thing as bad or really poorly written, because we are all researchers here, and we wrote based on our research data and analysis. And maybe there are some flaws in terms of restructure of the structure of your argument, or maybe it's like a lack of coherence. And I think you have to look into your field, into the area of your research, but because it's at the same time going to promote your research paper or your studies to the community. Keep a community that share your passion of your research, the topic or the area. So I think I submitted to cultural to Dr. Click also call for papers. So I think maybe there are some elements that I thought the reason why I was kind of not accepted. I'm always say rejected, but then maybe it doesn't suit or sit well there. I think one of the call of paper on the something about queer studies, perhaps, and then there were some areas also that I include of the religious analysis. Maybe I just thought so maybe, okay, maybe there are some arguments that might not be planned well. I'm fine with that. This is another example of your research. Where should it sit and who will read? Especially in my research area, it's all about Muslims. So there are people or researchers who may be do not want to look into religious perspective. They totally rejected that particular lens of analytics. I kind of, okay, I respect that. This is another dilemma. So those, I think I collected some voices also from my friends who's doing research, intersection of religion, production, as well as some of the cultural studies there. So they have this dilemma. I look into my research. I work with Professor Dave Hasmonhouse, same professor with Jason's. We share the same supervisor. And what I'm trying to say here is that your research, when you're going to publish, you always also look at your area, whether or not can be accepted by the community of that particular journal. Because I believe we have this community who maybe do not want any form of religious elements in there. And I compare my work with my friends who's doing something on Islamic films. I said, you're doing Islamic films. And then she said, my professor didn't allow me to kind of look into the religious perspective of it. So we were following the Quran, some of the the prophet's biography, which can be built or maybe look into built as a framework, a framework of your studies. But then she was quite frustrated about this. I said, how can you do that? I mean, you cannot like kind of allow your supervisee to bring some of their insights that has been adapted or extracted from their religious corpus, perhaps, because these have been researched over and over again by kind of Muslims scholars and been accepted by not only Muslim scholars, but also some Western scholars who are looking into religious aspects of, your research. And this is kind of a bit frustrated. But then I was lucky. I have Dave, who kind of asked me, what did your religion say about this? And he said, I'm not religious. He said, he said something about, I don't mind you bringing something from the Quran, something from the Prophet saying or the Prophet's life, and talk about and compare it with your observation, your ethnography in this media organization, because my research into the Muslims community who work in television stations. So I must bring some insights from a religious perspective. So I was really grateful. I thought, oh, okay. So you want me to look into the Quran and then find some of this aspect about, I give you an example, do not exploit others, because we're talking about cultural creative labor. And Dave said, yeah, you should find this. Any verses from the Quran saying that do not exploit your co-workers, for instance. So again, when you look into the journal as well, I believe there are some journals that they kind of give these limitations, or they don't want to look, or they want to accept the papers that have certain religious values or shaped by some kind of religious opinion. So that's what I'm, just my opinion as well. So maybe any one of you can add on to this.
Thanks,
Thank
Ella.
you.
I'm conscious that we are slightly over time now. So I want to our super great panel today, but I perhaps to end nicely, maybe just a short statement from each of our panelists, starting from Devin onwards to in the order that you folks presented, like maybe one key thing that you wanted our early careers to take away, to going back to the theme of making their research global. So one last maybe advice or tip you have for them. Yeah, so Divina, please kick us off.
Sure, thank you. I think this is something that I have practiced, so I can attest to it as well. Ask and you shall receive. Please be shameless about asking for guidance, for advice, for research grants, for conference travel grants. You never know, organizers might have a budget for it. Editors, reviewers might be able to help you, might be able to guide you through roadblocks, through bottlenecks. So yeah, ask and you shall receive. Not always though, and within limits and within reason.
Thank you, Davina. Melissa?
Well, so I'm so happy to have been a part of this group, so thank you. I would say make sure you follow the author guidelines, know the journal you're submitting to, make sure it's a good fit, and don't give up.
Thank you, Melissa. Sam?
Thank you, Jason. So do submit to conferences. There are deadlines. Try to work those deadlines into if you're a student, your semester, if you're early career, into your duties. Use those deadlines to help you manage your writing process.
Thank you, Sam. And last but not least, Ella.
Hey, do not give up. I know you wrote so many proposals and then there's so many rejections. You end up saying you receive so many notes from the, grant organizations. But your job is like to make your research visible. Your job is to make your research develop. Yeah, maybe you can see different angles, and then yeah, keep going, keep writing those proposals, even though it got rejected, but then you learn a lot by writing. I think I remember writing a proposal, like 3 proposals in a month. So yeah, keep writing, make your research global.
Thank you so much. So thank you so much to our panelists, a silent applause from wherever we are in the world. And to our participants, we do hope that one day, or maybe you're already doing it, you're contributing to making the field of communication and scholarship in general more global. Have a good day, everyone. Thank you so very much.